Thanks, Tim. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining today. Yes, my name is Fleta. I'm the CEO of Little Green Pharma, and we are all about doing extraordinary things for patients across the globe through the production of cannabis-based medicines, and that's both here in Australia and in Denmark in Europe. So if we flick to the corporate overview slide, we have some of the biggest shareholder names in Australia on our register, and this includes Hancock Prospecting and Thorney Group Australia, and they've both been really loyal backers along with other groups as well. I also want to mention on this slide that Angus Caithness and I, we're both executive directors, and between us own about 10% of the company. So shareholders can be really comfortable that we think like investors, we're not just management, and I think that's a really important point to get across. Currently, we have about 25 million in cash reserves from the end of December. The market cap is around 130 million mark, so an excellent buy given our strategic positioning in the international medicinal cannabis space and recent performance in Australia. If we go on to the investment highlights, just to very briefly and simply put, Little Green Pharma is extremely well positioned to supply high-grade pharmaceutical medicines across the globe, and we aim to be a leader across Europe as well. We're the leader here in Australia. We've got the premier brand. We were the first to produce cannabis medicines back in 2018, and we've been exporting overseas now for several years. We're vertically integrated with world-class production facilities in Australia and Denmark, and this provides us with great geographical advantages. Both of the facilities are EU GMP compliant, and this stands for Good Manufacturing Practice and is a prerequisite to sell into many countries overseas. And there's actually only a handful of companies across the world that actually have this capability. They can actually deliver. And we just won an Italian tender last night, and I'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation, but that's thanks to this EU GMP certification we have. We've got an incredibly dominant positioning in the EU now. We've got strategic supply pathways into several of the EU countries with emerging medicinal cannabis regimes. And that total addressable market is about the $37 billion mark. So we've got strong product innovation and R&D pipeline through a meet the market and a lead the market strategy. So we're very well primed and positioned for the industry as it progresses. On the business model slide, I'm actually, one more, thank you. I'm not going to go through this. I wanted to put it on the slide and on the screen so you can refer back to it, but it demonstrates a vertically integrated business model which we operate, and we love this because we can ensure that we're across all of the activities in the value chain, and we've got complete control. And of course, we're always after ways we can create value. So importantly, we're not only growers of medicinal cannabis plants, but we also manufacture them into those final medicines, and we have distribution and sales pipelines across the world, mainly Australia and across Europe. Okay, our growth strategy. So LGP, and we'll just move to the next slide. We've got a really clear strategy to achieve our vision. One, patient acquisition in Australia. So sales in Australia, really important for market validity and also for generating immediate cash flow. Two, commercial sales volumes in overseas markets. So this is where we want to focus. This is where we aim to make the profits. This is the big stuff immediately. And our end games are number three, which is unique drug delivery technologies. And this is to solve real patient problems in the longer term. Okay, so we'll move on. So that's our growth strategy. And I want to share with you our capability to be able to deliver on that strategy. So if we go to the next slide and have a look at LGP Australia. So this is in Western Australia. We have an indoor facility. We have complete control over the life of the cannabis plant. And this facility is capable of producing up to 3 tons of biomass annually. And our facility, or our manufacturing facility, is TGA GMP licensed. That means because of a mutual recognition agreement with Europe, our GMP, so our manufacturing license, is compliant with EU, and that is a really huge bonus. Moving to LGP Denmark, so this was a recent acquisition of ours, and it is fabulous. So we look at the sheer size of this facility. It's insane, it's magnificent, and has a production capacity of over 20 tonnes of biomass. So compare that to our Australian of 3 tonnes, so it's very large. It's also got a really big GMP manufacturing facility and a testing lab on site as well. So it makes it one of the few facilities in Europe. So we're well positioned there. Okay, if we have a look at our track record of patient access in Australia, so we'll go to the next slide, thank you. We had record half-yearly sales revenue of 6.9 million, so this is unaudited, but it demonstrates great growth considering the total revenue for financial year 21 was 7 million, and before that in 20 was 2.2 million. So we're really happy with the growth and where we're at. We've got well over 23,000 patients across Australia now, though it is getting harder to track this number, but we estimate this to be about 20% of the market share. If we go on and have a look at the size of the Australian addressable market, so we'll go to the next slide, it's really exciting. A recent industry report suggested that the 2022 market revenue forecast in Australia is estimated about 400 million, so that's quite huge. And Canaccord Genuity last year predicted the market at maturity could reach about $1 billion. So, and our patient numbers are climbing as well. The Australian demand continues to grow. The Therapeutic Goods Administration approved over 200,000 SASB script applications to date. So that gives you a really good indication of the trajectory and the increasing demand and the acceptance of medicinal cannabis, which is so important. So with all of this and our market share, I have to say LGP's future is very bright for the Australian domestic market. Okay, let's move on to the EU distribution, because this is where it starts to get really exciting, and this is the market that we want to be. So the clear message here is to demonstrate our dominant and strategic positioning across Europe. If we have a look at EU and the UK population, so we'll exclude Russia in this, it's about 515 million people. So the LGP's total addressable market, that is the countries in which we're strategically located or currently selling in, has a population of 350 million, or estimated at 37 billion at maturity. So I guess the significance of this is the EU market is much bigger than, say, the Canadian markets, and also bigger than the US markets. And so what's interesting is that very few North American companies actually have that manufacturing license or capability I just previously spoke about, nor the knowledge or the licensing to enter the European market. So this is really attractive for LGP because it sets us apart on the world stage, and we have really prime positioning. So if we just have a look at a few of those countries, the dark green countries on your slide, yep, thank you, is where we're currently selling in. So Denmark, first of all, we have a facility here. We have Denmark's first locally produced cannabis medicine registered, and we've got really encouraging first sales in January. So we are known as a company of firsts. We're the first in Australia. Now we're the first in Denmark. And we were, one of the first as well into Germany, the third to have oil medicines there. So the Germany and UK markets are really a big markets, and we have strong distribution partners there. What's interesting with Germany is Germany looks like legalizing cannabis for adult use in the next year or two. So it's highly likely that they will require high-grade EU GMP cannabis products or raw biomass. So that means Little Green Pharma is optimally positioned, and again, one of the few companies that can produce and meet these requirements. The light green coloured countries that you can see, I'm just going to spend a bit more time. This is such an important slide because it's really what we're targeting right now. These are the countries where we're strategically located to capture market share as those countries open up. These are really exciting because they're harder to get into, and it makes them more lucrative, or potentially more lucrative for LGP. So in France, LGP is one of only 4 suppliers participating in a government trial that's currently being run at the moment. We've shipped more than 23,000 units of cannabis medicines to the country, and this has a value of about 2.7 million, although we won't be recognising this as revenue because it's a study that's being done, but it's nice to know, what that value is. We've only got less than a year to run on that trial, and we really believe that LGP is set to capitalise on its brand equity and first mover advantage in that country. So one to listen out for and look at, exciting for us and our position. Italy, overnight, LGP has been pre-qualified by the Italian government, and we actually won the tender. So we are one of only a few or a handful of companies ever to be allowed to supply into Italy. So a huge market. So the overriding message here is that if we can capture market share overseas due to our first mover advantage and establishment of brand equity, just like we've done in Australia, then we'll really be delivering on that strategy across Europe. So very exciting. Great, we'll move on and just touch on our product innovation strategy. So on the next slide there, we have a meet the market and a lead the market strategy. Our meet the market strategy is about solving patient problems now and in the short term. So we currently have 9 oil and flower medicines which patients are accessing, and we currently have 2 new medicines, about to be launched, and we have 2 new dosage forms currently in development to solve unmet clinical needs. On our lead the market strategy, this looks at the longer term drug registration process, which may encompass drug formulation and or delivery technologies to again solve unmet needs. So this is where we really want to be in the future. It'll give us differentiation, it'll create protectable IP, so really meaningful position, not just the market share and brand equity that we've got now. So let's go and we'll just summarise. So on the next slide, thank you. And just to close, so why LGP? First of all, our capacity to deliver through our vertically integrated business model, our geographical footprint and infrastructure to supply medicines across Australia and Europe. You actually just can't beat our positioning. The market opportunity available to us, it's huge. And finally, our track record of execution. We're known for hitting our milestones, and we're not going to stop now. So really, that's it. Thanks, everyone. Open to questions. And of course, my contact details are on the last slide. If you'd like to reach out, I always love hearing from you. So thanks, Tim. Back to you and open to questions.
Thanks, Fleta. Always a very impressive presentation from you. Thank you. Now, quickly, was there any supply chain issues, or is there any inflation in the supply chain, given you're in the manufacturing business?
Oh, look, yes, definitely. We learnt early on, we were actually fortunate being in Australia, we were a little bit protected initially with COVID, if that's what you were referring to. We were able to learn pretty quickly that others in Europe were going to struggle. The benefit, I guess, of being vertically integrated is that we have that supply chain covered. So we were able to do things like, let's make sure we've got extra bottles and packaging at our hands, so ready and easy to go. So logistics have definitely caused a little bit of an issue just in terms of flights out of Perth in Western Australia, for example, don't happen every day these days. And so instead of being able to have product into a country within 24, 48 hours, it can be sort of 72 hours to a few days. So they're the kind of differences that we're seeing, but they certainly don't make or break. And we've been able to manage those in any logistical issues that we've had, we've been able to manage, so no dramas there.
And you've got a very strong cash position. I think it was $25 million. You own your manufacturing facilities in Denmark, and Europe's the target. So is there any plans to build some further manufacturing into Italy, for example, where you've just been licensed. Is that part of the future in terms of how you operate?
So we don't need to buy any more cultivation or manufacturing at this point in time. The idea is that Australian operations will eventually look after the Australasia or Oceania countries, whereas our Danish facility will look after Europe. So like Italy was a really important one overnight because the barriers to entry in that country are very high. You have to be EU GMP, so you have to have that manufacturing license and you have to be in Europe. So Denmark is so important to us in our future because that facility is where a lot of the future medicines for all of Europe will come from. So fortunately with Italy, we don't have to be there per se, as in we don't have to manufacture or produce. Our Danish facility will do that, and that's the benefit of the EU countries and how they work together.
And we'll just finish on a big question here. I use cannabis oil to help me sleep, and I've always got friends saying, where can I get it? So how does this market gain wider traction? And let's talk about Australia, for example. We've got 23,000 patients and a big market, and obviously same in Europe. How does this become mainstream?
Look, it is, yeah, it's a tough question. It's so complex. We could pick that apart and be here forever. Australia's regime is a little bit different to that of other countries. At the moment, we still need to go to a doctor to get a script, generally speaking, for medicinal cannabis. Recently, legislation did change to allow CBD to be over the counter in pharmacies. However, it will be some time before we actually see product sitting on a pharmacy shelf. And the reason for that is because it's going to be readily available, the TGA need to make sure that it's really safe and efficacious. So what it says on the label is somewhat true. And so, but mainly on that safety aspect. And that takes years. You have to do clinical trials. This costs millions of dollars and years. It's not as long as a product, like a medicinal product registration that can take 4 or 5 years and almost $1 billion for some companies. So it is a process, but we are getting there. And just with the sheer volume of doctors who are now prescribing cannabis medicines, there are literally thousands of them across Australia who are very open and are actively prescribing cannabis medicine. So every single day, we're getting more and more people become aware of medicinal cannabis. It is mainstream. It is here to stay. And some of the results, we've just published some results ourselves. We did a study on pain using one of our products and really promising results. And yeah, look, so with all of these evidence-based observational studies and the trials that are going to be concluding soon, the evidence is building all the time. So really exciting for this industry.